For coming. For the many of you who don't know me, my name is Jamie Zimmerman, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Global Assets Project, which is part of the Asset Building Program here at the New America Foundation. To give you a little background on the Global Assets Project, it's a joint venture between the Center for Social Development at the Washington University in St. Louis and the Asset Building Program at the New America Foundation. And it was launched in late 2006 as an effort to advance policies and initiatives that build savings and financial assets for the poor, low and moderate income individuals and families around the world. We wanted to set the context for today's event on conditional cash transfers, let you know why the Asset Building Program, the Global Assets Project, thinks that conditional cash transfers are interesting and compelling in and of themselves, but also why the Nigerian context and this particular program, the In Care of the Poor, otherwise known as COPE, is of interest to all of us interested in poverty reduction and conditional cash transfers in general. As you saw in the invite that we sent out, Nigeria is a country of contrasts. Just in the Washington Post this morning, there was an article on Nigeria's oil morass, $50 billion in oil reserves, contrasting against 50% poverty rate within the country. And so when the newly elected president back last summer set forth the 7-point agenda for making Nigeria a top 20 industrialized nation by the year 2020, and had his components for wealth accumulation, infrastructure development, and so on. This became something that was of high interest to us at the Global Assets Project, and something that we wanted to follow closely. To give you some background on, I think a lot of you in the room know what conditional cash transfers are, but for those of you who don't, essentially conditional cash transfers are cash transfers to households that are given on the condition that they participate in certain activities such as health and nutrition, literacy, and educational services. There's a brief out front. It's a 2020 focus brief by IFPRI that I think is, it's a 4-page brief that I think gives a really great overview of what conditional cash transfers are and the discussions around their effectiveness and their potential. So not only is the Global Assets Project interested in conditional cash transfers in general for a number of reasons, but also our particular interest in the Nigeria program. The reasons why we think CCTs, as they're called, are interesting overall is that their focus on the focus and impact on human capital and economic development of poor children and families, which on many levels we feel is at the core of the asset building concept. Second, their popularity and success as a social protection mechanism. What started just over 10 years ago as a small program in Mexico called Progresa now has expanded into a multi-million person policy, and this concept of conditional cash transfers is now in place and or under consideration in over 40 countries around the world, including the United States, with the City of New York just implementing late last year a conditional cash transfer program called Opportunity New York City, in which the Asset Building Program here at New America was involved. And finally, we find CCTs of interest for their potential linkage with other policies and products more directly focused on asset building, such as one we see as particularly promising, child savings accounts. Oportunidades in Mexico is the only CCT program that has incorporated a youth or child savings account to date, but we see this as an opportunity that requires some further exploration. And the reason why we see Nigeria's program as particularly compelling and interesting, and why we wanted to bring all of you together today to discuss it, not only because we've been tangentially involved in its formation just by being present at a few meetings and trying to advise the World Bank and the Nigerian government on how to make it more squarely focused on asset building, but also because a couple of, but a couple in particular components of this particular program are unique among CCTs, and we, in particular, I'll just tell you what they are. One, it focuses not only on education and health of children, children and families, and focused on the poorest of the poor in Nigeria, but has a very clear focus on microfinance playing an important, if not central, role in its dissemination and its implementation and its effectiveness. This is unique among CCTs. Also, its community-driven focus. The community will essentially run and manage this program, and that is also extremely atypical of CCTs, which are generally very centrally managed and controlled. So we're very excited. We were very excited just a week and a half ago when we learned that Dr. Pockel would be coming to the United States for a series of meetings at the Academy for Educational Development. And we're pleased that we were able to very quickly pull together this event with our co-host AED, and that we can convene all of you today to explore this program in more depth. So I think at this point I was going to turn it over to AED, who's going to introduce Dr. Pockel, but since he's not here, perhaps I will introduce AED. I'll introduce my colleague Margie Brand from AED, and then we'll hopefully after I do that, he will arrive, so that'll be great. So Margie Brand hails from one of my favorite cities in the world, Cape Town, South Africa. She is the initiator and executive director of Eco Ventures International, an environmental microenterprise development organization. And she runs AED's Strive program, funded by USAID's DCOF program. And I'll translate that for everyone, since that is all acronyms all the time. She's the director of the Academy for Educational Development's Supporting Transformation by Reducing Insecurity and Vulnerability with Economic Strengthening program, Strive, funded by the Displaced Children and Orphans Fund within the U.S. Agency for International Development. The STRIVE program aims to identify and demonstrate effective means of sustainably improving the economic circumstances and well-being of vulnerable children. And just as background, the Agency for Educational Development is a nonprofit organization working globally to improve education, health, civil society, and economic development. It implements more than 250 programs serving people in all 50 United States and in more than 150 countries. And we thank you very much for co-hosting this event with us today. And I'll have you come up and maybe say a few words about Strive and delay us a little bit and see how this will work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you also for all your hard work in pulling this together so quickly over the last week and a half. It's always good when you're trying to kill time to actually speak out each of the acronyms and what they mean.
Yeah, that's right.
Really good strategy there. I thought I'd mention a little bit about the STRIVE program and then hence AED's interest in this area. And also to briefly give an introduction. I know various of you have been in forums, discussions, and activities this last week with the Nigerian delegation. So I thought I could start by giving some background to who is going to be here today. The STRIVE program, as Jamie said, is looking at economic strengthening. And part of what it's a 5-year program, $16 million through the Displaced Children and Orphan Fund, looking at various economic strengthening initiatives that benefit vulnerable children. And a key component of the program is to look at the monitoring and evaluation component, to start really seeing what difference and what impact is economic strengthening, whether in the form of child savings accounts, whether in the form of village savings and loan groups, value chain-based initiatives, vocational training initiatives. What is the ultimate impact on vulnerable children? And not only the economic impact, but on health, education, well-being in general. Although STRIVE is not necessarily focusing principally on conditional cash transfers, part of the programs, there'll be 5 country programs in Africa and Asia, will be looking at how do communities and households receiving conditional cash transfers, how do these necessarily impact Good morning. Our Nigerian delegation has arrived. Thank you. Dr. Pakul, if you want to join us in the front, your colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about
Come around this side.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Dauda, there's a seat in the front. Daba. Great.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right.
We've been waiting with anticipation and excitement.
With anticipation.
And excitement. And we've been speaking a little bit to our colleagues from Washington, D.C. about the interest of the New America Foundation and AED in the area of conditional cash transfers. I was giving some background on the STRIVE program and the intersection on conditional cash transfers and the interplay with other economic strengthening programs and households that are or are not receiving conditional cash transfers and how and what the impact is of this. We have several of the consortium partners that are involved in STRIVE with us here today. There are several organizations involved in the program, AED, ACDI VOCA, Action for Enterprise, who is here today, CARE USA, Development Training Services, the IRIS Center at the University of Maryland, MEDA, the Mennonite Economic Development Associates out of Canada, Save the Children, who are here today, and World Vision. So these are all organizations you can speak to more about the various programming that will be done. With that, I wanted to introduce our keynote speaker today, Dr. Magnus Pakul. AED was, in November, hosted the Nigerian President Yar'Adua in Washington, D.C. And he was very excited about the potential of exploring more on potential partnerships with organizations in the U.S. in terms of the poverty alleviation strategies, which is one of the principal areas of focus for the Nigerian president. Dr. Pakul, with his colleagues, have been in Washington this last week as a direct result of that visit in November, and they have been meeting with both government, non-government, private sector, and members of the public sector to discuss potential partnerships in terms of their poverty alleviation strategies, in terms of capacity building, market access, and access to financial resources and partnerships. And this has really been the focus of the discussions. And as part of that, they have been sharing with us some of their strategies and their plans around specific programs, one of which is the conditional cash transfer program that we'll hear about today, and the other which focuses more broadly on general village economic development schemes. To give some background on Dr. Pakul, because I feel that we are really privileged and honored to be hearing you share with us not only about your programs today, but also your broader thinking in terms of poverty alleviation and economic growth strategies for Nigeria. Dr. Pakul is currently the Senior Special Advisor to the President of Nigeria. He's also the National Coordinator of NAPEP, which is the National Poverty Eradication Program in Nigeria. Dr. Pakul has been with the previous administration in Nigeria and has then been requested by the current president to continue under the current administration. He was formerly the Chief Economic Advisor to the President of Nigeria and CEO of the National Planning Commission. As Senior Special Advisor to the President and the National Coordinator of NAPEP, he oversees and coordinates for the President all activities aimed at mass participation in the economic development process and poverty eradication. He works with various international development partners for this purpose, and the purpose of partnering in Nigeria's poverty eradication activities. before joining the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 2001, Dr. Parkour was closer to where we are now. He was professor of economics at the University of Dallas in Texas and adjunct professor of economics at the University of North Texas. Prior to this, he was the president and principal consultant of Visions International, which is a business and managing consulting firm in Texas. Prior to this, Dr. Parkour worked at J.C. Penney Company in the U.S. as its principal international economist for 9 years. And this is where he managed the company's international economic and business research. He is widely recognized as an authority in global economic issues, as well as a poverty eradication expert, being featured many times on international network television, quoted in various media and publications. Dr. Parkour is the winner of the prestigious Kwame Nkrumah Africa Award for Leadership in 2004. And most commonly in Nigeria is known as the chief representative of the poor in Nigeria to the president. So Dr. Parkour, we are very honored to have you with us today, and your colleagues, Mr. Dauda Dinladi, who is the director and coordinator of the National Poverty Eradication Program, Ms. Daba Tom Manuel, who is the special assistant to the president of and the coordinator of NAPEP, and Ms. Sianbola Olubumi, who is the assistant director and program desk officer for 2 of NAPEP's key programs, the Village Economic Development Solutions Scheme. She always focuses on the solutions component there, and the Promise Keeper program. So thank you for joining us today, and with that I'd like to hand over to Dr. Parkour to share with us briefly about the conditional cash transfer program and how that fits into the poverty eradication strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maggie Brand. Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We came in, and as soon as I sat down, I noticed that they were introducing me. It kind of reminded me of, I think it was a commercial, it was a Holiday Inn commercial, where the guy comes there introducing him, and then they introduce him, and he's clapping, everybody's clapping, and somebody says, "It's you that they introduce." But just hardly waking up here, and then I have to stand and speak to you. But I'm highly delighted to be here this morning to talk about what we're doing in Nigeria. President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua was here in December and was hosted by AED, and was truly delighted with the reception he got from AED, the indications for collaboration that he got from AED. And he said that I needed to go and visit AED and try to see how we can concretize some of the things that he worked on, that he talked about, and that they discussed when he was here in Washington. We've also had the occasion to interface with the New America Foundation via video conferencing, and as they've been given some advice and some suggestions on our conditional cash transfer program. I believe perhaps there are some people here from the World Bank. We've got very good support from the World Bank, working particularly with the group in Nigeria led by Mr. Kumadewa. And so we want to come and share with you some of the things that we have been doing in our conditional cash transfer program. Also, over the last couple of days, we've been very well received by AED with excellent hospitality. I had very fruitful, vigorous, strong, sometimes, discussions that have been quite encouraging to us and illuminating in terms of some of the things that we're trying to look at. And we have quite a bit to take back home with us. So we're pleased to come here also this morning to share with this group, and to also be able to pick up some things that we can share with President Yar'Adua and other colleagues back in Nigeria. But in terms of our strategies for Nigeria, because whatever we're doing at the National Poverty Eradication Program, and of course wanted to mention my colleagues that have been introduced all here. They are the the foot soldiers that are really involved in these programs, led by the Director for Coordination and Program Development. But whatever we do is set in the context of the vision that President Yar'Adua has for Nigeria. And his vision is to have Nigeria be amongst the top 20 largest economies in the world by the year 2020, which is quite ambitious, but which we believe we can achieve. The President, and this is supported by other research and indications from other studies that have been done. So it's a feasible thing, but we have to work very hard to try to achieve that. And what the President has done then is to set up an agenda based on what he called the 7-point agenda that involves various facets of activities in the country. And every ministry, department, and agency, every private sector company, every state government, local government, and any entity in the country is supposed to have its contribution, its strategy for making sure that the country achieves this vision. So our responsibility, being the National Poverty Eradication Program, is to coordinate and monitor all poverty eradication activities in the country and to catalytically provide empowerment to the people, especially the poor, so that we can spur, as Margaret said, mass participation in the economic development process. And if we do that, we believe that we would then be able to engage and empower the poor who are not contributing as optimally as they can to the economic development process. We have a poverty rate that is somewhere around the 50% range. In 1980, we had a poverty rate of 28.1%. We'll try not to be that precise. There was a guy, a tourist, who had gone to a country in South America, and they were giving him a tour and through some artifacts, and he had seen this one fossil, and they told him, he said, this fossil is 16 million years, 2 months, and 3 days old. And he said, wow, 16 million years, 2 months, and 3 days old. How could he be so precise? And the lady said, well, that's because 2 months and 3 days ago, when another group came through, it was 16 million years old. So I'll try not to be that precise, but the poverty rate was somewhere around the 28% range in 1980. But somehow we managed to ratchet that up to 70%, as was estimated, in 1999. So obviously some things didn't go that well. And we then noticed that in the 20-year period before 1999, we averaged an economic growth rate of at best 2%. Some figures show 1.5%, while the population was growing at about 3%. And so we were getting the so-called misery growth. Well, over the 6-7 year period after 99, we've seen the economy averaging a little over 6% growth rate. And as a result, the poverty rate has declined, in our estimation, given the National Living Standards Survey that was done in 2004, declined to about 54, again to be precise, 54.4% in 2004. Since then, because of the momentum that we have in the growth process, we believe that the poverty rate is somewhere around the 50% range, using our own definitions and our own methods. But that is a very significant poverty rate. And so President Yar'Adua has said this is unacceptable, that we can have, that means literally 70 million Nigerians in poverty. That's like many African countries combined in terms of population. So something has to be done, and it has to be done very fast and very aggressively. And so he's challenged us to come up with new ideas, new ways of engaging there's 70 million of the people that are not as vigorously involved in the development process. And so we've come up with our village economic development solutions, which we've been sharing with our partners at AED and other colleagues over the last couple of years, days. Sounds like years. That's right. After the strong discussions here. We've had we presented our strategies in that connection, where we're trying to be more transparent. Because again, part of the reason why we were not as successful as we could have been in fighting poverty is really due to poor governance, which we recognize. Since democracy, the previous administration and of course this administration recognize very well and are doing a fantastic job to try to get things reversed. As you know, President Yar'Adua is very bent on the rule of law and has demonstrated that in his support for the decisions of the judiciary and backing of decisions made by our courts. And he believes that the only way we're really going to be successful is if we raise the level of governance and really have law and order, and we think that that's fundamental. And so in that spirit, we are to open up a little bit more than we have been, to show ways of being very transparent and involving the poor themselves as agents of change so that they can see what's possible and what's not possible. And so our village economic development solutions does that. It's set, our strategies are set in the context of village participation, economic participation at the grassroots. But even so, there are some people that are left out of the arrangements. There are some people that are way too poor to be able to be very meaningfully engaged in the development process using our village economic development strategies. And so we've come up with a conditional cash transfer scheme, which we call COPE, which is coined from in care of the people. And that's resonated very well with the people. And that's because President Yar'Adua has said that it is literally un-Nigerian for anyone to be left in misery. In our tradition, we take care of one another, especially the downtrodden. People try to take care of them all across the country, from the south to the north. It's just part of our tradition. And so the government itself also has to be seen in that spirit to be involved in making sure that every Nigerian has a role to play and has a voice. And that's what we've come up with our conditional cash transfer program, our COPE. But even so, we don't have nearly enough resources as other countries to make it as robust as we would like to have it in the first go. So we've started with 12 states in a pilot scheme, 12 states across the country. Given the nature of Nigeria, we have what we call a federal character in literally everything that we do. It's our way of ensuring unity and understanding and cooperation across the country. There are 6 geopolitical zones in the country, and whatever we do has to be set in the context of adequate and equitable representation. In fact, equal representation across the geopolitical zones. And so we've chosen 2 states from each geopolitical zone. For those who are very familiar with Nigeria, in the northeastern zone, we've chosen the states of Borno and Yobe. In the north central zone, we've chosen Niger and Nasarawa. In the northwest, we've chosen Jigawa and Kebbi. In the southwest, we've chosen Ogun State and Oyo State. In the southeast, we've chosen Enugu State and Ebonyi State. And in the south, we've chosen Cross River State and Bayelsa State. And these states were chosen not because they're the poorest states, but because of the things that we want to promote. Our cash transfer program is very conditional upon the fact that households, send their primary age kids to school, that they keep them in school and get them off the streets, where they may be hawking or off the farms or fishing activities, so as to ensure that we can end intergenerational poverty and we can spur high literacy rates and therefore be able to achieve the objectives that the President has set for us. So we then constructed an index that we call the Human Capacity Development Index. In the algorithm, a key factor is the girl-child enrollment ratio. We also involve indicators from general literacy of the adult population in the States. And so when we use that, given some considerations also to poverty, we were able to choose the states that we have chosen. And essentially how it works, I imagine there'll be questions, so I'd like to sort of make it brief. Essentially how it works is that because of the paucity of funds, the funds that we are using are mainly from the debt relief gains that we've got as a result of the debt forgiveness that we've got over the last few years from our partners, international partners. And we have 2 billion naira devoted to this program from the 2007 fiscal year, another 2 billion for the 2008 fiscal year. And we are expecting matching funds from the states. Almost all the states have indicated readiness to match the funds. But if we were to use just federal government funds alone, given the way we've arranged things, we'll probably be able to reach, on the average, just 1,000 households per state. So it's kind of small in scope. But the households are chosen again at the community level, at the village level. The village organizations themselves choose households in a very open fashion, where within a village, they divide the village into the way we suggested, into 10 units, 10 groups. That the village is shared into 10 groups, and the people are selected from each of the 10 units, and they come to a central place, and then they select again until they get the people that most qualify. So the people themselves, they know each other. They know who is poor, because you have to first be poor and then have a kid that is not in school, or have kids that are not in school. And there is a limit to the number of kids you can have to not be in school, so that we don't encourage people having many kids or throwing their kids out of school. So if, for example, you have one kid out of school and you qualify because you are a poor widow, you're poor aged, or you are a poor leper, or a poor person with HIV, AIDS, or whatever. So first you have to be poor and then have the other condition. If you have one kid, we will give you a basic income guarantee of 1,500 naira a month. And that would be, my experts will tell me quickly, that would be $20 or $15. But less than $15. So let's see. So say $12 or so per month per child. Then, because you also don't, there could be a moral hazard in making it be too, for those who make, well, some people have thought it's too little, some have thought it's too much. So I'll see what you think. So they get, but in the Nigerian context, they know it in terms of naira. So it's 1,500 naira per kid. And if you have 2 to 3 kids, you'll be 3,000 naira. And if you have 4 kids, you get 5,000 naira, and that's it. So if you have 50 kids, you still get 5,000 naira. So that's the way we've sort of arranged it. And you get this money on a monthly basis, also so long as you take advantage of training from the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria for what we call life skills. How to take care of yourself, basic numeracy, literacy skills are given, and how to understand how to run the business, because the idea, because we're going to graduate you at the end of 12 months and then set you up with a loan, not a loan, it's a grant actually, to go on by yourself. So by the 6th or 7th month, a lump sum of about 84,000 naira is given to you to start your business. So that by the 12th month when you graduate, you would have got a good handle on your business to where you can begin to replace your 5,000. Say you got the most amount of money that you should get. You can replace the big we call it the big. So the actual COPE equals the big plus the prey. The income, this lump sum money is what we call the Poverty Reduction Accelerator investment money. So that, because that's to accelerate you getting out of poverty. So the COPE equals big plus prey. You get the basic income guarantee and then the prey. So at the end of 12 months, you're graduated off, and we go to the next group of poor people in the village. Because there are just hundreds or thousands of them. But if we had more funds, we'll be able to make it a little bit more robust. But that's essentially how it works. And we're looking that these people then can be graduated to where they can qualify for our normal microcredit programs, given our village economic development solution, because these are people who would not ostensibly be able to take advantage of our normal programs that we have. And we think that this is a good way to utilize our very scarce resources, but to show that we care for the people and to get meaning and some results out of the resources that we put into it. And again, that's just in a nutshell the sort of what we're doing with our conditional cash transfer program we call COPE. And I thank you very much for inviting me to share it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pakul. So we only have about 40 minutes left, and I know there will be a lot of questions, and we want to give enough time for comments from our expert discussants. So I'll just introduce you briefly, and I'll turn it over to both of you, and then we'll open it up to the floor for questions. Our first discussant today is Alan Mouchet. Alan Mouchet works on the Poverty Analysis and Social Safety Nets team here at USAID in Washington. Her work focuses on linking vulnerable populations to economic opportunities, whether through micro-enterprise, social protection, or health-related projects. She has worked overseas in Mexico, Nicaragua, Bangladesh, and Ethiopia, and continues to travel to provide technical assistance globally. She holds a master's in social work from Washington University in St. Louis and joined the government in 2004 as a presidential management fellow. And another Alan, Alan DeBraw, is a senior research fellow at in the Food Consumption and Nutrition Division at the International Food Policy Research Institute, popularly known as IFPRI. He holds a PhD in Agriculture and Resource Economics from the University of California, Davis. His expertise is in analyzing rural labor markets, migration, and in program evaluation. Much of his published and unpublished work has used primary source survey data, and he has field experience in China, Mozambique, Malawi, and El Salvador. He is presently co-managing the impact evaluation of the Red Solidaria conditional cash transfer program in El Salvador. Thanks for coming. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Good morning. Is that working? Okay. Good morning. I want to thank Dr. Pakul for a great presentation, and also thank New America for inviting me here today, and thank Jamie for pronouncing my name correctly. I think that, overall I want to start out by saying how commendable I think it is that the government of Nigeria is taking on such an ambitious program. There's a lot of writing and reading about the variety of conditional cash transfer programs all over Latin America, but I think this is the first one of such scale in Africa, and I think it's commendable. I think it's also important to note that the benefit to Nigeria taking on this program right now is that you can benefit from all the lessons learned and the data that's already come out of all the other programs that have been implemented, not only in Latin America, but also the slew of unconditional cash transfer programs that have started up in Zambia and Malawi and other places. It's no secret that conditional cash transfers have strong impacts on school attendance, health services, utilization, on the ability of households to manage risk. And I think they're important because they focus beyond consumption to looking at human capacity building and investment in assets. We have data from the unconditional cash transfer programs in Zambia, Ethiopia and Malawi that shows that households take even the small amount from the already small cash transfer amount and put it into savings. So households that are even at the margin are investing in their own futures. And I think that speaks to the power of what even a small amount of money can do for a household to think more constructively about their own future and to give them more flexibility in making their own choices. I'm sorry, I got lost. My handwriting is terrible. I wanted to just make a few notes and make a few humble suggestions to the government of Nigeria as it begins down this path. And I think it's important for me to note that these are not criticisms because I have not been to Nigeria and I have not seen a full description of your program. So I wanted to just make a few suggestions based on some of the shortfalls and the impact evidence from other cash transfer programs. First of all, in terms of impact and evaluation, I think the reason that we can cite so many results in Latin America and talk about the impact that they can have was the large investment that governments and the World Bank and institutions made in really doing substantial impact evaluation. The incredibly detailed work that is done by IFPRI in Mexico and in other places is the reason why we can talk so much about oportunidades. And I would encourage you to think very seriously about emulating that level of detail in your evaluation if you haven't already. But even where good studies have been done, some of the outcomes have been less studies than others. There's much less information available on achievement in school, achievement in educational outcomes. There's a lot less information on changes in disease prevalence, on incidence, because the focus is on, tracking numbers of attendance or the number of times someone goes to get a health service. But taking it one step further and saying, did this really reduce the number of cases of malnutrition that were reported? It's very difficult, and sadly there's no carbon dating available for poverty. But I think it's important to try and take that step, and it would be very ambitious indeed. It's important to know that I think kids are in school and that they go to health clinics, but it's equally important to know that their time there is being well spent. Secondly, I wanted to say a few words about the capacity of frontline, your foot soldier implementers of the program. Few, if any, studies that I've read on any cash transfer programs have spent any time at all with or talking about frontline workers. And by that I'm talking about loan officers, civil servants, social workers, teachers, health workers. There's a lot of time spent looking at data and talking to beneficiaries, but it's just as important to focus on the people who are actually delivering the program and ensure that they have the resources and the respect and the compensation that they deserve to do their job effectively, because that will be one of the huge ultimate determinants of whether or not the program works. With this increase in duties for these individuals, I think increased support should come, and this, I think, would only strengthen the overall program. In particular, when I was in Mexico, I did some social work in Children's Hospital, and I helped complete Progreso paperwork, and it was not the easiest thing to figure out either for beneficiaries or for the social workers themselves. So it's these simple things, just filling out the documents, finding the documentation, that just an extra effort in training and capacity building can make a big difference in how effective the program is. And the third thing I wanted to note was that in terms of public information campaigns about the details of the program and how it works and who's eligible and who isn't eligible can really help increase the transparency of the targeting process. It can decrease conflict between village members if everyone understands why some people are receiving help and others are not. It can also help to have a really clear and simple to understand grievance procedure if you wanted to go back and contest why you weren't involved in a program, just to give people that ability to go back and get some more explanation about why they weren't included. That can be a significant source of empowerment, I think, for villagers. It also helps the public understand the efforts that the government is taking on their behalf, and the public information needs is something that's been cited in a number of studies as something that's really crucial. So I just wanted to challenge Dr. Packel and the rest of you to focus on a few of these additional issues in addition to your already massive task, and thank you for giving me the chance to comment today.
I'm going to stand up. I used to be a college professor, and I really have a hard time sitting down when I talk. So I want to talk a little bit actually Alan talked from the consumer side of studies on conditional cash transfers. I'm going to talk a little bit from the producer side, but a little bit also from the consumer side because I'm sort of a newer producer of these studies. One aspect that we are finding quite interesting right now is whether or not the transfers should be conditioned, and from your and then the way the conditions actually are monitored is a particularly important bit of conditional cash transfer programs. According to your description of the COPE program in Nigeria, the people are getting transfers for a very short period of time. I've actually never heard of a program where people are receiving transfers for such a short period of time. And in El Salvador, where I'm managing the impact evaluation right now, they were promising a 3-year period of transfers. But now I understand that that's probably going to be increased because of elections. So that's always another issue that I'm going to get to is how these things hit elections. The conditioning, it turns out, is expensive, and I'm going to talk just very briefly about why it's so expensive to condition cash transfers, but it's also, we've found, somewhat necessary. John Hodnott and I just looked at the Progressa data again recently, and we found a little quirk in the program that some people didn't receive the right forms in Progressa to be monitored. And it really didn't matter for kids who were of school age and were continuing in school, and that kind of makes sense when you have 90% primary school enrollment. So, but the way you're describing Nigeria, and again, I haven't been to Nigeria before, so I don't actually know, but you're describing much lower primary school enrollment rates amongst kids who are, say, 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 years old. And if that's the case, then the conditioning probably is very important for those kids to make them go to school. In Progressa, it wasn't important until kids were switching school levels. When they switched from primary school to lower middle school, those kids actually, in Progressa villages, were 20% less likely to continue in school if they weren't being monitored. So it was actually particularly important. The conditioning can be particularly important if kids need that monitoring to continue in school. When they're just going from first to second or third grade and going to the same school, there's really no difference in impact. And in a sort of a similar study on Ecuador, which is one of the programs that has an unconditional cash transfer program, they actually found something similar where in Ecuador it was flipped around, though. They kind of told people, oh, you're supposed to send your kids to school, et cetera, but they never did anything to monitor it. And there, again, the same type of thing happened. But these are different. These are probably different situations. I was actually interested in who you decide to leave out of the program and how that's actually discussed within the village. In China, we don't talk about conditional cash transfers in China because they aren't conditional there. They're unconditional. They have a program a very new program called the Rural Dibao program, which is by far the largest. Actually, it's not by far the largest program in the world. It's actually going to be very large, and they're rolling it out right now. In China, they actually have chalkboards at the village offices, and they put the people who've become eligible for transfers, their names are on the chalkboard, and if somebody wants to say this person is not allowed, shouldn't have a transfer, they get 2 weeks. People are allowed 2 weeks to make a complaint about a specific person. And I actually like this idea because it's extraordinarily cheap if you think about it. It's really cheap for the government to put up a chalkboard at the village office or at the headman's house or something and have the names written up. And if somebody wants to complain, they can actually complain. And everybody then the process is transparent. And transparency is extraordinarily important in improving governance. And I think that this is an idea like this could actually work. Now, in terms of when you're conditioning transfers, so you've made the decision to condition transfers, the next problem is monitoring the conditionalities. And I was interested, I have a couple of questions about how you plan to monitor the conditionalities. In particular, it takes a lot of capacity and a lot of paperwork and a lot of getting the paperwork done on time to be able to figure out whether people are actually being conditioned or not. Turns out in El Salvador's program, we were trying to figure out how the conditionality was working too, because we're trying to estimate the impacts, and it turns out the first year of the program, they have no conditionality at all, because people come in the middle of the school year, for instance. They start getting their transfers there. The school year is February to November. If they start the program in September, all of those months that the kid hasn't been, they don't count that first year, but then they start the next year. So it sounds like also another issue is timing that you need to think through. That you really want to time the program at the beginning of the school year so these kids go in and start the grade correctly. But the monitoring is important, and how you deal with the paperwork is an interesting issue, and then monitoring the monitoring is a further issue, particularly for a program that's quite spread out. Now, given your design, which is, again, unique in that you give people this 84,000 Naira at the end, it's quite an interesting, novel design from my perspective. And again, I haven't heard of anything that's quite like this. Yes, people will save some, but this is really, you're really imposing a massive savings rate on these people. And then you give them the training. So my question is, what is the credible threat? You addressed moral hazard, but at what point, if your kid hasn't been going to school, do you take away the 84,000? And if you're running this program over a series of years, you worry that if the first year you do it, you don't give a credible threat, there's going to be a bit of a problem, right? So that's another interesting. I'd be interested to hear about what your thoughts are on that and how to address that. And are you really going to be able to not give people this 84,000 Naira? The last thing I want to say, and again, I find the program novel, when you give people 84,000 Naira, I wonder what they're going to actually do with the 84,000 Naira. Now, I could imagine you can imagine a bunch of different types of things you could do. One thing you could do is start a microenterprise, which would help economic development. Another thing you could do is build yourself a nicer house, right? And actually, that also helps economic development. One of the ways that China got its rural development started was actually because people were living in these ramshackle houses that communism had dumped on them for 30 years, and they started building bricks and cement and all the things that go into houses. And so actually, if you start to see that, it's not bad. What you might worry about is if people start having parties at the end of the 12-month period with their 84,000. And I'm not sure, because it's a transfer that's given at the end of 12 months, and you're not going to, these people are graduating, so to speak, from the program, I'm not sure what you can do about that, if that happens. So thank you again for having me, and to the New York American Foundation, and to the government of Nigeria, and to Dr. Pakal for his very interesting comments. Thank you.
Okay, so I believe we only have about 20 minutes left, so I was going to just quickly survey, perhaps a show of hands of how many people have questions they'd like to put on the floor already. So I have 1, 2, 3. Okay, so how about perhaps Dr. Pakal, if you'd like to just comment briefly on some of Alan or Alan's concerns or questions, and then we will open up to some questions from the floor.
Okay, thank you. Deal with the law firm here of Allen and Allen. Okay. But yes, I think that the comments and suggestions were all very, very constructive, and I took very good notes, and I'm sure that my colleagues also did. especially the question concerning who is left out. Because we will have large numbers of people that will be left out, that would wonder why they are left out and when they will be considered. And that's the reason why, again, as they suggested, transparency is extremely important. So we would like to we'll try to make sure from the beginning that people understand how you qualify. And all the guidelines are given to the community organizations, that would help in the selection process. And we will have we're starting the sensitization process already, where people are sensitized. We have got this mobile video units that we take to the villages. And we invite people and we explain to people what's going to happen. We explain who will get the conditional grants and who will not, and how you might qualify down the road, and what it means for the community. And also, on the PRAE, the Poverty Reduction Accelerator investment money, you get it because you've got training. There's training for a business that you identify early on. At the start of the program, if you want to be a tailor, you're going to be sewing something. If you want to be selling biscuits, if you want to do whatever, I don't know, but whatever it is that we believe working with the village, that will be viable business for you, and you know that you can do successfully, and other people have done it, or the opportunities are there, the comparative advantages exist. And when I say we, is yourself, the community, the local government, all of the people that are involved believe that this is a viable business where you can be successful. If that's the case, but it's led by you, you suggest first what you think you can do. And then we give you training in that area for free. So we know that you can do the business successfully. And you get the money. Actually, they help you make sure that if you're going to be a tailor, they make sure you get the sewing machines. So you don't get the money and then we say, okay, we'll see you next time. We make sure you go and buy the sewing machine, because we don't buy it for you. So you know that it actually costs you $84,000, however it costs you. And so you buy the sewing machine, and now you start your business and all the things that are related to that sewing business. And then you start your business. So at the end of 12 months, you're supposed to be able to replace your big. Now, if you then get your kid out of school, the money becomes a loan. So if we cannot enforce your kid, because you've got the sewing machine already, we've not thought of seizing it from you, but we've thought of, maybe that's something to think of, I don't know, but we've thought of just saying it becomes a loan, and you must pay back this money. Whereas if your kid stays in school, then it's not a loan. It's just a complete grant. But also, because in terms of the threats and what do you do, the village also, if there's a certain dropout rate beyond which there are punitive steps taken against the village, I think it's like 90% attendance. So if it's less than 90% success rate for the program, if it's less than that, then the village is disqualified from further participation, and that is a grievous offense. That's a serious thing for the village, and no village wants to be in that kind of category. So the village chiefs, the heads, the principals are involved. In terms of the monitoring also, so that means that the villages, the churches, the mosques are involved in the monitoring. The principals of the schools are involved. The local government assessment committee is involved. There are a number of different kinds of people that are involved in the monitoring process. And we're also hoping that our development partners will also be involved in the monitoring. So then we'll have an occasion to compare notes to see how the monitoring is going and how we've never done this before. so we also have, we're also apprehensive in some ways about some of that. That's why we're here to listen. And we'll just keep monitoring, and then we'll use that expression before we will tweak the process as we go forward. I don't know. I think that's, okay. I've handled some of the issues that came from here. Yeah.
Okay. let's open it up to the floor. We'll see the hands again. Who had a question? Okay, if you could stand and introduce yourself so we know who we're.
My name is Shana Omoli. I'm a Nigerian. First of all, Dr. Tapol, I want to commend your expose of this program. I don't, and you just said it just now, we've never done anything like this in Nigeria. Therefore, it's going to call up the best efforts in us in terms of monitoring and evaluation and closely following this. Otherwise, it becomes, in our language, a dash. Yeah. Government is just dashing me. This is my portion of the national cake. We need to work this so that we can get away from that perception.
Yes.
I have read a Guardian newspaper editorial on this subject. If I didn't come here today, I wouldn't have understood this at all. I would have taken it from the perspective of the Guardian newspaper, which said, why should we be giving money away like this? Why don't we use this money to provide infrastructure that supports critical mass, provide clean water for people, provide rudimentary health services for people so that everybody benefits, not just a few handpicked. But here you are, you've described the process of picking those people. The Guardian doesn't know that, and that's my point. Government programs in Nigeria suffer tremendously from lack of understanding by the people because we do not use the critical means of communication to educate the people so they understand exactly what the objective is going to be. I would recommend that somehow NAPEP gets into some kind of a campaign so you can have critical mass behind this wonderful idea. Otherwise, the intelligentsia in the cities will kill your effort.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, please.
My name is Frank Weeby. I'm at the Millennium Challenge Corporation. And the program that you've described is a very interesting one. It seems though that you're actually combining a number of different things. And so what people are describing as unique may not be so unique, except in the sense that they're a combination of things. And it'd be interesting. I'm guessing most people here are interested in the conditional cash transfer aspect, and that's the monthly stipend for make sure kids go to school, and that can be thought of as a welfare program with fairly proven impacts. Now, the connection with this and the financial grant, which is to start a micro enterprise, and the training that goes with that, that's a slightly different animal in a sense. And so, in some sense, I worry a little bit that you are combining the two activities with different justifications. And so, I guess the question is, on the one hand, the conditional cash transfer, that would be something that you could evaluate. Is it effective? Should we continue with that in a way, in one way? Is it possible? Are you going to be creating a way that you can then look at the second aspect, and that's the training plus the business aspect?
Yeah.
Because to be honest, I'll be generous, there's a mixed record of those programs worldwide. And so the question is, would there be a way that you could, as an economist, say, you know, we've looked at this and assess whether the economic returns on that aspect of the program actually justify the continued investment? Because I think the gentleman here who talked about the alternatives, Nigeria is a resource-constrained environment. Is there a way that you'll be able to determine whether that part of the program, not the CCT part, but the other part, would be worth continuing or not?
Okay. Okay, yes. Okay. Well, first of all, the Shala's comments, I take that. I have nothing to say to what he has said. I think he's just absolutely right. But this, you're right. We understand how we've tried to bring several elements into this. And the reason we did that is because it's not just because we wanted to be different. It's because of constraints that we face. We don't have, or we don't see ourselves as having the capacity to just keep continuing with the basic income guarantee. That would be a little bit too expensive for us. Notice in the first instance, we only have 1,000 households per state, whereas there are thousands and thousands of households that would not be reached using that approach. So the using the PRAE, the Poverty Reduction Accelerator Investment, that lump sum grant is given to them in the end as form of a microcredit, although not to be repaid, is done as a way of continuing to keep them getting an income. The reason we give the big is because they send their kids out on the streets to hawk, to bring money back to them every month. That's how they make an income as a household. They send them to the farm for fishing so that they get an income. And we're saying not only then perpetuates the poverty situation and whatever misery that they're in. So education, as you know, is very important. And so we want to make sure that kids are in school. But they will never send the kids to school if they are going to lose their means of livelihood. So this way now they bring the kids in school for the big. But we cannot continue with the big forever. So we give them this money in the hope that it will start a business that will cause them to be getting an income now until forever. And it might also impact other people in the community. They may grow the business and hire other people and have linkages to other activities. So in the end, there's some value added by doing this. So this is why we've done the mix. And we will continue to monitor to see what happens over time. If we see that the costs associated outweigh the benefits, then we'll make adjustments in that regard. Yeah.
Any comments from Alan on the combination of CCTs with this sort of grant, or before we move on?
I would disagree slightly. I would think that it's unique because you're giving the grant to the same beneficiaries, but I would agree with and I think that's a unique aspect of this, whereas other microenterprise programs did not have a CCT kind of beforehand. Now so it's sort of a unique blend of the two. Now that said, I would agree that microenterprise type programs do have a mixed record, and knowing what you should think about is how to go about evaluating seriously and rigorously whether the microenterprise bit of the program is working in a year, and there are a lot of different ways that you might design that type of an evaluation. You probably don't want to just go to the village 6 months later and see, oh, these businesses are working. It's more important to go back 2 years or what have you. And then, as you're saying, the other thing that's actually quite difficult to even think about how to do is to look at the spillovers, if there are spillovers to other individuals within the village.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. I just wanted to quickly say, I think the combination of the CCT and the microenterprise startup project is interesting. I think that it's more likely to be successful if there's significant private sector involvement in terms of working with the training and identifying actual business opportunities that exist. I think it would also be interesting if the project maybe had some more flexibility in the sense that households could use the money to fund higher education or further education rather than just starting up a business, because I think, in the mixed record of microenterprise that we've been discussing, it's very true that not everyone is a successful entrepreneur and not everyone is successful at starting a business, as evidenced by the people on this panel, none of whom started their own business.
That is true. That is absolutely correct, yeah. That's correct.
I just wanted to point out the not necessarily uniqueness of the entire program. And
Could you introduce yourself real quick?
I'm Evelyn Stark from CCAP. I know you've been given the paper on what we call a graduation program,
Yes.
which is very similar to this. It's working with partners and their beneficiaries who are receiving cash transfers or often food transfers and the like, and then receive training, et cetera, and asset transfer. Extremely similar, although it's not all done by the one government. And there are research and impact research programs in place in each one of the program areas that we're involved in, and I'm sure we'd be happy to
Sure.
Work on
Well,
those
good.
areas on it. But
Okay.
I would definitely reiterate the choice of businesses that people are given. When you come to a village and you're dealing with people who have not run their own business, the normal choices are sewing and carpentry.
Yeah.
Neither of which are particularly economically stimulating to the economy, et cetera, unless there's a factory for seamstresses or a housing boom that requires carpenters. So I think definitely looking at the value chain, and I know there's a bunch of people here who can talk about that more, in assessing that business opportunity to, otherwise you will get a whole nation of carpenters.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right.
Sure, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Jeff Meyer. I'm looking at America here. I just had a question sort of different than some of the other ones I've asked. Just in terms of the funding for this program, I'm interested in terms of, how the money, where the money comes from in terms of the Nigerian government, given the federal system there, but also if you have any thoughts of including private sector as well as international aid.
Yeah. Oh yes, I can answer that one. We will be looking for money from wherever we can get it. So if you have some right now, we will take with us. But so far, the money is coming from a portion of the debt relief gains funds that go to the federal government. When the debt relief gains come, they're shared across the country by the federal. We have 3 tiers of government: the federal, state, and local. And from the federal government's share, we're given a portion for this conditional cash transfer. We're also then requiring the states. The president is setting the agenda for this and saying this is an important. This is the agenda of President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, and he's saying that the states should take the leading role. In fact, what the president is doing is for the federal government to be catalytic, where ultimately this would be driven mainly by the state and local governments, with maybe capacity support from the federal government down the way. But this is a way for the president to introduce it, to say that the state governments and local governments can do a little bit more than they're doing now. And there are some states, that have taken up the challenge and have started already doing something on their own. Now, of course, we're going to be collaborating with them. So we will. The money comes mainly now from the federal government, the state governments. We would like to involve the private sector. I think, as Alan said, maybe a good way would be to involve them on the investment side, where the people get this, what looks like microcredit loan. But it's not that easy to get private sector people to give out free money as grants. The person from the oil company has left already. Maybe he knew we were going to get to this part. But the oil companies, we will look to them, especially in the Niger Delta, to support these kinds of programs. So this is a very good suggestion. We'll try to see how we work with the private sector for their collaboration there.
Hi, my name is Malika, and I work with Evelyn at CGAP. And since she brought up our programs, I thought I would just comment a little bit on what we're starting to learn. So we are piloting a similar sort of program that's about developing income-generating activities for very poor people in about 5 countries, probably going to up it to 7 in the near future. And since our pilots are much smaller, maybe we're generating learning more quickly than you have so far. One very key piece of learning that we didn't anticipate at all was, in fact, how much things like health and clean drinking water limit the amount that very poor people are able to generate income. Because the leakage, in fact, for health expenses, to buy clothes, to buy water, in fact, in many of the places we're working, are so high that even with that monthly handout, or in some cases we're doing a weekly handout, so much of it doesn't build that sort of consumption stability that you want to see.
Yeah.
And we've had some success in our programs in linking with programs that are already in place So making sure that our beneficiaries know that through X, Y, and Z programs, they can get a free toilet or water purification tablets or whatever the case may be. But just to keep in mind that the poverty at least what we're seeing is that the poverty of the people we're working with is not just about income generation.
Yeah.
Right? It's about all these sort of income erosion factors, and that we can't forget about those. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think we'll be very happy to come to share, see some of the things that you. This is new to us, so we're very open to suggestions and ideas in this area. So we'll come talk to you. Thank you.
Okay, this is the last question. Let's wrap up.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Hayden, and I'm a private consultant. So
Yeah.
I don't have the pleasure of working with any of you, but a number of friends and I have gotten together to do a clean water project in Nigeria, and I was there in June, and I'm going back again in June. But one of the things I saw when I was there was a collective asset building initiative by a group of villages there to collaborate around their market days, where they, instead of having individual markets in the villages, they got together because they discovered that they leveraged their financial return by deciding on moving their market days around to the villages in a very organized way. And so my question is, does the project have an ability for collective asset building as opposed to individual asset building? Should people decide to invest their money in that kind of economic development initiative, or would that considered to be feasible?
Now we like to promote the so-called collective asset building. We like to promote, especially for the poor, because since they have small parcels and small chunks of assets, you can get a bigger critical mass if they pull together. But for this particular program, we haven't really, I don't remember that we've tried to look at that element. But since you're coming to Nigeria, again, we would like to see. As I said, this is new. Whatever we can do to strengthen it, this program, we would be happy to look at it to see how we do it. So we haven't. Maybe my colleagues, maybe there's something that you know in that regard, Dauda.
We're happy to receive.
Yeah, but we're just happy to talk to you and see how we can explore that possibility.
Lovely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, well, we need to wrap up. We have another event, and C-SPAN's coming in to set up. So these were all really great questions, great discussion. This program, ambitious and also in its infancy, so perhaps in a year or so when you come back to the U.S. again, maybe we can have another discussion on what you've learned so far and next steps from there. So thank you so much for coming today, Alan, and Dr. Pakol, and the delegation from Nigeria, and thanks to all the audience. And we can step outside, and if we wanted to have some more conversation out there, that's fine as well. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.